The audit room felt like a freezer. I sat at the long oak table with my hands folded in my lap, trying not to shake. Across from me sat Truman Wells, my manager, leaning back in his leather chair like he owned the place. Maybe he thought he did. The audit director, Mr. Harrison, was reviewing documents with narrow eyes. That's when Truman spoke. His voice smooth as honey but poisoned underneath. "The transfer was approved by Madeline," he said, pointing at me without even looking. "She signed off on it. She had full access to the budget accounts." Everyone turned to stare at me. The room seemed to shrink. My pulse roared in my ears so loudly I wondered if everyone could hear it. $2 million. Missing. And apparently they all thought I took it. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to scream. But I stayed silent, watching Truman's face. That's when I saw it. The tiniest smile at the corner of his mouth. Barely visible. But it was there. And it meant everything. That small smile changed everything in my head. I'd worked at Halston Dynamics for 3 years, and I'd seen that expression before. It was the look Truman got when he was winning, when he was getting away with something, when he was enjoying someone else's pain. I realized in that moment that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake in the system. This was planned. This was deliberate. He wanted me to sit in this chair and feel everyone's eyes on me like lasers burning through my skin. That smile told me he'd set this up. He'd done something and he was blaming me for it. My face felt hot, but I forced myself to stay calm. Don't show him you're scared, I thought. Don't give him the satisfaction. Truman glanced at me for just a second, and his smile grew a little bigger. He knew I understood. He knew I was panicking. And he was enjoying every second of it. The worst part wasn't the accusation. The worst part was knowing he was happy about it. I took a deep breath through my nose. My hands were still shaking, but I unclenched my fists and placed them flat on the table. Everyone was waiting for me to say something. Anything. "My name is Madeline Pierce," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I need you all to hear the truth before this goes any further." Mr. Harrison looked surprised. Truman's smile finally disappeared. That was good. That meant he wasn't expecting me to fight back. "I did not approve that transfer," I continued. "I did not take that money. And I can prove it." The room went quiet. Even quieter than before. I could hear the air conditioning humming through the vents above us. Truman shifted in his seat. He was nervous now. I had evidence. I had backup plans. I had recordings and logs and paper trails that would make everything clear. But first, they needed to understand what kind of person Truman really was. They needed the whole story. The real story. The one that started 3 years ago, when I was young and stupid and believed what he told me. 3 years earlier, I walked into Halston Dynamics for the first time as an employee. The building was all glass and steel, modern and impressive. The kind of place that made you feel like you were part of something important. I was 25 years old and terrified and excited all at the same time. Truman interviewed me himself. He was probably 40 back then, with gray streaking his dark hair and a smile that seemed genuine. He wore an expensive suit and smelled like cologne that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. "You show real promise, Madeline," he'd said during that interview, leaning back in his chair just like he was doing now in the audit room. "I think you're going to do big things here." I believed him completely. I believed every word. I went home that night and told my roommate that I'd finally found my career. This was it. This was the beginning of everything good that would happen to me. I was so naive. I didn't know that those words were a trick. That they were meant to make me trust him. That they were the first step in a 3-year plan to destroy me. During my first year at Halston, I did everything Truman asked me to do. And then I did more. I arrived early and stayed late. I took on projects that weren't technically my job. I learned the entire budget system, all the accounts, all the processes. I became the person who knew everything about how money moved through the company. Truman would come to my desk with problems, and I would solve them. He'd present my solutions in meetings as if they were his own ideas. People would compliment him, and he'd say thanks without ever mentioning my name. I noticed, but I told myself it was fine. Teamwork meant we all helped each other, right? Eventually my hard work would pay off. Eventually I'd get recognized. At least that's what I kept telling myself. I'd stay at my desk until 9 or 10 at night, reconciling budgets, tracking expenses, making sure every number was correct. My shoulders would ache. My eyes would burn from staring at spreadsheets. But I did it anyway, believing that loyalty and hard work meant something. Believing that Truman saw how much I cared and would reward me for it. I was wrong. Truman didn't see loyalty. He saw a tool he could use. During my second year there were rumors. My coworkers kept mentioning something about a new position opening up. A senior role in the budget department. The kind of job that came with a bigger office, a better salary, and actual authority. I was excited. I was sure it would be mine. I'd done all the work. I deserved it. One afternoon, Truman called a meeting with our whole department. He stood in front of everyone with a big smile on his face. "I'm pleased to announce our new senior budget analyst," he said. "Please welcome Thomas, who will be joining us from the accounting division." My stomach dropped like I was falling off a cliff. Thomas. I didn't even know Thomas. I'd never seen him before in my life. Later I found out that Thomas spent most of his afternoons in bars with Truman, drinking and laughing. They were friends outside of work. That's how he got the job. That was the first real cut. The first time I understood that Truman didn't actually care about hard work or loyalty. He cared about who he could drink with, who he could call his buddy. I wasn't his buddy. I was just his worker. After that I paid attention differently. I noticed patterns. Important emails would go missing. Spreadsheets I'd created would have small changes that made my work look careless. Truman would point out these errors in front of other people, shaking his head like he was disappointed in me. "Be more careful, Madeline," he'd say in that disappointed voice. "These kinds of mistakes make you look unprofessional." I knew I hadn't made those mistakes. I knew someone else was changing my work. I was pretty sure it was Truman, but I couldn't prove it. So I started keeping records. I printed out my work every single day and stored it in a folder at home. I started taking screenshots of spreadsheets. I documented everything. One day I left my desk to get coffee, and when I came back my computer had been locked. Someone had accessed my account. That's when I realized Truman had probably figured out that I was onto him. He knew I was paying attention now. And he didn't like it. I decided to check the building's access logs. Halston Dynamics had a security system where you used a keycard to get into certain areas. Your card was tracked every time you used it. I managed to look at the logs for my department one evening when I was working late. That's when I saw it. On the log from January 15th at 1:14 in the morning, someone had used my keycard to access the budget office. I was home asleep that night. I remembered because I'd been sick with the flu and hadn't come in that day. My heart started racing. Someone had my keycard. Someone had used it to get into a secure area in the middle of the night when nobody was around. And I had a pretty good idea who that someone was. I looked through more logs. Happened 3 times. Each time it was late at night or very early in the morning. Each time I was home. Each time, someone with my keycard was accessing areas where they could look at budget files and account information. I knew I needed to confront Truman. I knew I needed to ask him directly what was happening. But I also knew that confronting him could be dangerous. If he knew I was onto him, he might do something even worse. The next day, I pulled Truman aside at lunch. We went into an empty conference room and I closed the door. He looked confused, like he had no idea why I wanted to talk to him. "Did you borrow my key card recently?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady and calm. His jaw tensed immediately. I saw it happen. He clenched his teeth, and a muscle in his cheek twitched. "Why would I need your access?" he asked, but there was something sharp in his tone now. Something angry. "I saw it on the building logs," I said. "Someone used my card to get into the office at 1:14 in the morning." Truman stood up fast. His chair scraped back against the floor with a loud screech that made me jump. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he walked out of the conference room, but he walked too fast. Like he was running away. Like he was scared of what I might say next. That's when I knew for sure. He was guilty. And he was panicking because I'd caught him. 2 weeks later, the audit started. Someone in the finance department had noticed that $2 million from a government contract budget wasn't accounted for. The money had been transferred out of the account, but there was no paperwork, no approval, nothing to explain where it went. Everything about it pointed to my workstation. The transfer had been made from my computer. My login credentials had been used. My access codes had authorized the transaction. It looked like I had stolen the money. Except I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. And now I knew who had. But knowing something and proving it were two completely different things. I had the access logs that showed someone used my keycard at 1:14 in the morning. But that wasn't enough. An expensive lawyer could argue that maybe I'd gone to the office and forgotten about it. Maybe I was confused. Maybe I was trying to cover up something I'd done. I needed something bigger. Something that couldn't be explained away. I needed proof so clear and obvious that nobody could possibly doubt it. The company called me into an HR meeting. It was horrible. The HR director, a woman named Patricia, spoke to me like I was already guilty. She used that special voice that adults use when they're disappointed in you, like I was a child who'd done something bad. Truman was there too, sitting next to Patricia like he was concerned about me, like he cared. He kept saying things like, "I want to support Madeline through this difficult time," and "I hope we can resolve this as a team." It made me want to throw up. "The evidence is pretty clear," Patricia said, sliding a folder across the table toward me. "We're going to need you to cooperate fully with the investigation." I wanted to tell her everything right then. I wanted to explain about the keycard, about the access logs, about Truman using my credentials. But something in my gut told me to wait. My lawyer, if I had one, would probably tell me to wait too. So I nodded and said I'd cooperate. But inside I was planning something. I was going to fight back. And I was going to win. That night I went home and pulled up everything I could find. I accessed network logs from work using my remote login. I exported access histories for every single person in the department. I traced anomalies, looking for patterns that didn't make sense. Hours passed. I drank coffee and ate nothing and just stared at my computer screen until the numbers started to blur together. But slowly a picture emerged. Clear, obvious picture. Truman had been accessing files that he shouldn't have access to. Files that required my credentials. He'd been in the budget office at 1:14 in the morning, just like the access log said. And he'd been in there at other times too. 2:47 a.m. 11:52 p.m. Times when normal people were asleep. Had the data. I had the proof. But it still wasn't enough. Not really. Anyone could look at these logs and say the same thing I'd already thought. Maybe the logs were wrong. Maybe someone else had my keycard. Maybe there was some explanation I wasn't thinking of. I needed something undeniable. I needed something that would make every single person in that audit room understand, without question, that Truman was guilty. I needed video footage. The next morning I found myself talking to Mario, one of the janitors who cleaned our floor every evening. I'd always been nice to Mario, always said hello and asked how he was doing. Not like some people at Halston who didn't even see janitors as real human beings. We were standing by the coffee machine, and I casually mentioned that I'd heard the cameras on our floor had been updated recently. "Yeah, about a month ago," Mario said, nodding. "New equipment. Better quality. The company wanted to upgrade the security system." My heart started beating faster. A month ago. That was around the time when Truman first started using my keycard to access the budget office. "Do you know if the old footage gets saved anywhere?" asked, trying to sound casual. Mario shrugged. "Usually the IT department handles all that. They keep backup copies of everything for a year or so." "Why do you ask?" I told him I was just curious. He didn't need to know what I was really thinking. But inside I was running. Inside I was already moving on to the next step. If the cameras had been updated, that meant there was footage. Real footage. Video evidence. Proof that nobody could argue with. I found Marcus in the IT department. He was a guy probably around my age, quiet and smart, who I talked to a few times about computer stuff. I asked if we could meet somewhere private, and he looked nervous but agreed. We sat in his car in the parking garage during lunch, and I told him everything. I told him about Truman, about the access logs, about the missing money. I told him what I thought Truman had done. Marcus's hands were shaking as I talked. "Maddie," he said, "what you're saying is really serious. If you're wrong about this, it could destroy his career." "I'm not wrong," I said. "I can feel it in my bones. And I need your help." Marcus hesitated for what felt like forever. Finally he nodded. "Let me check the server backups. Give me a couple of days." 2 days later, Marcus called me and asked me to meet him again. This time his voice was different. "Scared. You need to see this," he said. "I'm shaking because I can't believe it. But Maddie, the footage is all there. Everything you thought happened. It's all on video." I pressed play on his laptop and my world changed forever. There was Truman on the screen. Clear as day. In the middle of the night, wearing dark gloves, holding my keycard. He slid it into the reader at the entrance to the budget office. The door clicked open, he walked through. Then the footage showed him sitting at my desk, typing in my username and password, using my credentials to access the financial system. His fingers moving across the keyboard, making the transfer. $2 million. Moving from one account to another. All of it tracked and recorded. My hands were shaking as I watched. This was it. This was everything. This was absolute, undeniable proof. I immediately made 3 copies of the footage. I saved them on 3 different USB drives, and I hid them in 3 different places. One in my apartment, one at my mother's house, and one in a safe deposit box at my bank. I wasn't taking any chances. I wasn't going to lose this evidence. The anger I felt was enormous. Filled me up like poison. 3 years. 3 years of working hard while he took credit. 3 years of being sabotaged and blamed. 3 years of believing that loyalty meant something, that hard work mattered, that the truth would win. And the whole time he was using me, setting me up, planning to destroy me. I contacted a corporate lawyer named Victoria Chen. I didn't go to her in person. I called her office and described my situation without giving away too many details. She asked me to come in for a consultation. Victoria was smart and direct, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. I told her about the footage, the access logs, and everything else I'd discovered. "Here's what you need to do," she said, leaning back in her chair. "You do not accuse him first. You don't go to Truman and tell him what you know. You let him accuse you." "But why?" I asked. "If I have proof, shouldn't I just show it?" "Because," Victoria explained, "if you accuse him first, he has time to prepare a defense. He can claim the footage is fake. He can accuse you of doctoring evidence. He can create doubt. But if he accuses you first, and then you calmly produce evidence that proves him wrong, the story changes. You go from being a suspect to being a victim. You become the person who was brave enough to fight back." Understood. I hated it, but I understood. So I waited. During those waiting days, life was horrible. My coworkers avoided me. People who used to say hello and chat with me now looked the other way when they saw me coming. I'd overhear whispered conversations that stopped when I got close. "Madeline's being investigated. I heard she stole millions. I can't believe she seemed so nice. You never really know people." The rumors spread through the office like a disease. Within a week, everyone thought I was a thief. Everyone believed I'd stolen money. Everyone was disappointed in me, disgusted by me, suspicious of me. The worst part was watching Truman walk through the office. He'd whistle as he passed my desk. Whistle. Like he didn't have a care in the world. Like he'd already won. Because he thought he had. He thought I was completely destroyed. He thought I had no way to fight back. That's when the anger transformed into something cold and focused. I wasn't just going to prove my innocence. I was going to make sure everyone understood exactly what he'd done. I was going to make sure he paid for it. The day of the audit arrived. I dressed carefully in my best professional clothes. Navy blue suit, white blouse, black shoes. Hair pulled back neatly. I looked calm. I looked ready. We all sat down in the conference room. There were 8 people present. Mr. Harrison was reviewing documents and looking confused. Truman had brought falsified approval emails, fake paperwork that supposedly showed I'd authorized the transfer. I don't understand, Mr. Harrison said, frowning. These approval emails don't match anything in our system. They should be there, Truman said smoothly, leaning forward with false concern. Madeline must have deleted them. She's been trying to cover her tracks. He made eye contact with each person in the room. His expression serious. He was a good liar. That was the problem. He'd been lying for years. As her manager, I've been concerned about her recent behavior, Truman continued. I've documented irregularities in her work, missing files, unusual access patterns late at night. I even asked her about borrowing her keycard, and she became very defensive. My stomach twisted. He was twisting everything, making my suspicions sound like evidence against me. He was carefully building a narrative where I looked guilty. Mr. Harrison looked up at me. Everyone looked up at me. The air felt thick. Truman leaned back in his chair, watching my face carefully, waiting for my panic. He was enjoying this moment. And my hands were shaking. Not from fear though. From knowing what I was about to do. From knowing that in moments, everything would change. I'd like to share some visual evidence, I said calmly, standing up. The room went very quiet. Truman's face went pale. Visual evidence? Mr. Harrison asked. What do you mean? I mean security footage, I said. From the cameras on our floor. Footage that shows exactly what happened. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the projector. The same projector that had been used for presentations about quarterly profits. Now it would show the truth. Truman started to say something, but he couldn't get the words out. His mouth opened and closed. His hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. Let's start with January 15th at 1:14 in the morning, I said, pressing play. This is when someone used my keycard to access the budget office. The video started. The image was clear, with a timestamp in the corner. You could see Truman walking toward the budget office door. He put on dark gloves, covering his hands carefully. He took my keycard from his pocket and slid it into the reader. Gasps echoed around the room. One person covered their mouth. Patricia's eyes went wide. This is manipulated, Truman whispered. She's faked this. Doctored evidence. But nobody was listening. They watched him sit at my desk. They watched him log into my account with a password on my sticky note. They watched him transfer $2 million to a shell account. Mr. Harrison stood up, his face dark red. Security, he said to his assistant. Call security immediately. The video kept playing. There was more evidence coming. I pressed pause and pulled up more documents. Bank records, shell companies, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. A complex network of transactions traced back to Truman and an offshore LLC set up 2 years earlier. The stolen funds were transferred to Pacific Bridge Holdings LLC, I said, pointing to documents. Registered in Delaware but based in the Cayman Islands. The beneficial owner is Thomas Reeves, Truman's middle name and his mother's maiden name. One of the lawyers flipped through the documents with trembling hands. This is money laundering, the lawyer said. This is premeditated financial crime. I showed the access logs proving only Truman used my keycard. I showed network records proving he accessed the system from my credentials. I showed emails he'd sent using fake accounts, trying to implicate me. The pattern was undeniable. He'd created shell companies, forged documents, stolen my keycard, accessed my accounts, transferred the money, then blamed me. I have 3 copies of the security footage, I said quietly. Each in a separate, secure location. One is with my lawyer. Nobody was defending Truman anymore. They all finally understood the truth. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. They stood there waiting. "Stand up, Mr. Wells," Mr. Harrison said. His voice cold and hard. Truman didn't move. He stared at me. His face had gone white. This was someone whose entire world was collapsing, whose life was falling apart. He looked at me with wide eyes like he couldn't believe I'd actually done this. Like he thought I would just accept the blame and disappear quietly. Like he thought I was too scared to fight back. But I hadn't disappeared. And I'd won. The guards approached him. Slowly he stood up. His expensive suit didn't look impressive anymore. He looked small, pathetic, like a man who'd been caught and knew his life would never be the same. As they led him out, he didn't struggle or protest. He just walked, shoulders slumped, completely defeated. His world had crumbled in minutes. The investigation lasted 3 weeks. Every single thing I'd told them was confirmed. The footage was real. The access logs were real. The offshore accounts were real. The falsified emails were real. All confirmed by experts. The FBI got involved because this crossed into federal territory. Money laundering, wire fraud, identity theft. Truman was arrested and charged with 11 counts. Internal review confirmed I had absolutely nothing to do with the missing money. I was completely cleared in writing, with an official letter signed by the CEO. The stolen funds were recovered. Halston Dynamics got the $2 million back. The company's reputation was strengthened by catching corruption and turning Truman in to federal authorities. My co-workers who had avoided me started coming back. They apologized. They felt stupid for believing the rumors. They were glad I'd fought back. But something else was happening. Something that would change everything about my future. Mr. Harrison called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. I was nervous walking in, even though I knew I was safe now. Old habits died hard. His office had floor-to-ceiling windows looking over the city. He sat behind his mahogany desk, looking tired but impressed, like he was seeing me differently now. "Sit down, Madeline," he said. "I've been waiting until all the investigations were complete before making this offer." My heart beat fast. "The board of directors has decided we need someone to lead our entire budget integrity and oversight department," he continued. "Someone we can trust completely. Someone with courage to stand up against corruption." I held my breath. "We'd like you to become our budget integrity lead. It's a new senior management position, reporting directly to me and the board. It comes with a substantial salary increase, better benefits, full authority over all budget and finance oversight, and a private office on the executive floor." This was it. This was the position Truman had tried to destroy me to get. And now it was mine. "I'd like to accept," I said. "Thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Mr. Harrison said, smiling. On my first day in my new office, I walked past Truman's old desk. It was empty. His nameplate was gone. His office had been cleaned out like he'd never worked there, like he was being erased. I rode the elevator up to the executive floor. My new office was on the 23rd floor, overlooking the entire city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany desk, real art on the walls, a bathroom attached to my office. This was the office of someone important, someone trusted, someone valued. I sat down at my new desk and looked out at the city below. Everything looked different from this height. Clearer. Better. I could see the path my career had taken, all the struggles, all the pain, and now the victory. It had all led me here. In my first team meeting, I gathered everyone who worked in the budget department. 15 people sat in the conference room, all looking curious and nervous. I looked them all in the eye. This was important. "If someone tries to bury you," I said slowly, my voice steady, "don't fight for air. Don't panic. Don't struggle. Stand still. Let them dig. Eventually they bury themselves. The truth has a way of coming out. And when it does, the person who was honest will be standing, and the person who was dishonest will be defeated." Nobody said anything. They just listened, understanding the weight of what I was saying. That's going to be the philosophy of this department, I continued. Honesty, careful work, attention to detail, integrity, every transaction correct, every document true. We're going to be the most trustworthy department in this company. And if anyone tries to do what Truman did, we're going to catch them. I looked around the room and saw people nodding. They understood. They believed in what I was saying. It survived. It fought back. It won. Now I was going to make sure nobody else experienced what I'd gone through. The story was over. My new life was beginning.